everybody. I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Z Garcia.
I am Mike Licio.
And I'm Roy Canning.
Welcome to Dice Tower Reroll. This is where we go back in time, not that far actually, but we go back and take a look at a game that one of us has already reviewed, and now you get 4 opinions on it. Maybe 3 opinions. At least somebody's going to give a different opinion. This is just a way for us to go back and talk about them. If you're looking for how to play the game, that's not this video. The original review is. Mm-hmm. In this episode, we've been asked a lot to compare these 2 games, both tactical games that came out last year in 2019, and that is Funkoverse, which is from Funko Pop's games, and from Restoration Games, Unmatched.
Right.
Both these games have a very similar theming in which there will be 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2 players, where you have some characters that are from different IPs. Funkoverse has Bigfoot, Robin Hood, Medusa, Bruce Lee.
I mean, that's Unmatched,
Unmatched.
not Funkoverse.
Yes. And Funkoverse has DC characters and Harry Potter and Rick and Morty.
Golden Girls.
Yes, even that.
Forget the Golden Girls.
You cannot forget the Golden Girls.
So I just thought we'd see people ask us which one's better, and I think it's not a unanimous vote. But we'll come back to that in a second, okay? Let's talk about components. So, obviously, if you like chibis, the choice is clear.
Funkoverse.
And the other
Big
one,
old heads on tiny little bodies.
Beady little eyes.
if you like the
staring into
Funko
your
Pops figures,
Sure.
Yeah.
you're definitely going to be on. They're not the same size, they're smaller, while Unmatched has plastic miniatures of all these different things. But there's also tokens in it, so some of the sidekicks are just a token.
That's right.
They're acrylic tokens, generally, aren't they?
Yeah.
They are
Yeah.
acrylic tokens. The components are, the plastic in the game is very nice, but Funkoverse has fully colored
Correct.
miniatures. You know, they are that style. They are also have weaponry and items, accessories that they are holding. So I think the plastic side of things is a little splashier when it comes to the Funkoverse game. The other one has more traditional miniatures. They do have a wash on those miniatures.
Yeah, which is nice.
So they look nice. There's some nice detail
And
pop
I
there.
actually really enjoyed the sculpts from Unmatched as well. I think the details
They're
on them
very,
are really nice.
but they are also traditional sort of board game sculpts.
Sure.
So which do you like better when it comes to components?
I mean, for me, it's Unmatched. I really enjoy the more actual, like, miniatures, board games type stuff. I've never been a huge fan of, like, the chibi Funko Pop, like, big head stuff. And I mean, I don't really mind chibis in general, but the Funko Pop thing for me is not necessarily my style of stuff. And I think it's, like, interesting the way it looks, and people that are into that, I'm sure, will be a huge fan of that.
Right.
But for me, I like I wouldn't even say realistic. It's all like fantasy characters and silly stuff. But it is cool to see like Bigfoot with a giant log on his back, and the wash really brings out a lot of the details in those characters. So I really enjoy the miniatures from that game.
I do too. I'm sorry to jump in here. And the reason I do is because to me, playing Unmatched and the components in Unmatched feel like a board game with fairly traditional minis, like I said. Funkoverse feels like rules wrapped around toys.
Yeah.
And I think the components do not alleviate that sort of voice in the back of my head, where I feel like I am moving around figures, toys, something you might display on its own. And now there are rules there that might govern how you mess around with this stuff, but the proportions are weird, and you will feel like you are moving around and sort of manipulating something that doesn't feel natural to me. And this is not a massive problem. I don't abhor playing the game, but there is that feeling of this wasn't meant to be. From like the inception,
No one's head should be that big.
No, like the inception of this was not a board game. These pieces feel, and they are. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's simply the fact that I know that they are, basically taken from something else. But I do have that issue with it. They don't feel natural, and they sort of bump over on their faces a lot or fall over a lot because they are a figure that has a massive head and is supposed to just sit there on display.
The scale is certainly different. I mean, you've got the maps in Funkoverse are supposed to be, a warehouse or the Golden Girls' house, and the scale of those minis to that is off, like you said. Whereas in Unmatched, you've got more of like almost a landscape in most cases, and the minis look like they could be somewhat proportional to where they might be on that landscape. So I can see that. There's certainly a much higher toy factor in Funkoverse. There's no two ways about it. But if we're talking about the quality of the components, I think it's pretty close between the two, because really, those Funko Pops themselves are certainly fine quality.
Yes.
I mean,
sure.
they
Yeah,
don't
definitely.
look like they are any less of a quality than the other ones. And the other components are nice too. I like those big chunky crystals. I can't help it. The boards are thick. They're certainly not going to wear down over time. The card quality was fine. Maybe the cooldown track I would have preferred to be actual cardboard rather than that card stock.
Right.
That might have been nice, but I have no complaints about the quality of the components in Funkoverse, and neither in Unmatched. I mean, I think both give you good quality for what you're paying.
I will say this, though. You kind of breached on this where, like, the scale is off and the other one doesn't have that problem. However, in defense of Funkoverse, it's also much less abstracted in Funkoverse.
Yes.
You are moving around a realistic location,
Correct.
be it whatever it is. Whereas Unmatched is quite a bit more abstracted.
It really is.
Yeah.
You are moving around an arrangement of circles
Correct.
that you are supposed to consider are parts of a forest or
A castle.
whatever. Right? I mean, they are not. That feels quite abstracted.
Yes.
Actually-
It is a manipulation of things that don't translate to I'm hiding in the bushes and I'm going to spring out and jump on Robin Hood. You don't get that feeling.
No.
Yeah, I really like the backgrounds for Funkoverse. The Unmatched, unfortunately, is a tie in that way, in a sense that I thought the boards very functional, very useful for line of sight, but the look of them is kind of meh. And the tokens don't look fantastic. But then on the flip side, the art on the cards
Is amazing.
for them is really well done. It's
is
just
amazing.
great art, and it really, that's my favorite component actually of that particular series is the art on the cards. Now that's an interesting thing though about this game is that I believe there's more customization in Funkoverse.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because in Funkoverse I can take one of the Golden Girls and give her a Batarang.
Right.
That's right.
And then put her on a team with Morty. And in Unmatched, you're simply just saying, hey, I'm taking Robin Hood.
Right.
Yep.
Yes, if you play team matchups, you can take Robin Hood with Medusa, but Robin Hood's never going to have cards from King Arthur in his deck.
But I think some people like that and some people don't.
Right.
Oh, I
You-
agree.
sure,
I
you
love the customization better.
Yeah, you like that ability of sort of putting your foot through the thematic ties.
Right.
And that's fine. Some folks enjoy that concept. I want to have a samurai character with a machine gun. That's great. That's fun for a lot of people. I like one bubble going up against an anachronistic bubble. Okay? So I like that Bigfoot is represented and behaves like Bigfoot in his own deck. I don't want him to have a ninja sidekick. But I will take him in that, like I said, that sort of like that character, what represents that character. I will take him up against King Arthur, or Robin Hood, or Medusa, or Sinbad, or whatever. So I actually prefer the style of Unmatched when it comes to pitting things that are unrelated together.
I think, and that's just going to come down to which one do you want to do. in that
Absolutely,
regard.
absolutely.
There's the whole aspect of team building and stuff in Funkoverse, which you just don't have at all in Unmatched. I mean, you build a team, you're trying to draft stuff, and you can kind of min-max that a little bit. Like, I want to get these characters that synergize with these powers because then I can spam this power a bunch. I mean, it has that almost... I mean, it harkens back a lot to like I played a ton of hero clicks in my past, and it feels a lot like, you're trying to build like a team. Even the grid-based movement is very similar in that way, and it's all dice-based, and you're chucking like line of sight, hit them there. But it's very interesting, like you're trying to build a team that kind of synergizes together a little bit if you're trying to come out on top and figure out how to min-max that stuff.
That probably is my favorite part of Funkoverse is that setting up your team, kind of finding a nice little combo of players that work well together and those skills that work well together and being able to kind of trigger those cool abilities. That really is the thing that sets it apart a bit. I'm not saying it's necessarily better or worse for that, but that is the thing that differentiates it to me from some other tactical skirmish games that I've played. And you've played a lot more, and I think you've played a lot more than I have.
I have. I think it's hard to speak objectively in this regard, but I think you could almost make a pretty strong case objectively Unmatched is a more strategic game.
Sure.
There's no luck in the combat other than you might not have the cards you need,
Well,
right?
that's luck. I mean,
There's that luck there, but there's much more luck in Funkoverse where you're rolling dice.
Absolutely.
And anything can happen. They both have very clever systems. I think the cooldown system's amazing. I like the fact that in both games, you don't have to really think too hard about what you do.
Right.
You just in Unmatched, you just grab a deck. And in Funkoverse, I'm like, I'll take these 3 characters. I don't have to put that much effort into.
Right.
Oh, this one's 16 points, that one's 27 points,
Yeah.
but if I add the Batarangi's now another 16. And so I think they're both very simple games, but I think there's more strategy, and if you're looking for more of that tactical nature where the better man will probably win, I think that Unmatched wins in that regard. Funkoverse, you could just lose because you roll poorly.
I do like that combat system more, the Unmatched combat
Yeah,
system,
for sure.
but it is also less thrilling. It's less active. You know, in Funkoverse, you will be chucking dice, taking actions, swinging from one room to another, and it is just it's more kinetic of a system.
Right.
Whereas Unmatched is a much more sedated system, maybe. I mean, it's sort of, yes, it's a little more thinky, and there's a level of bluffing in it. There's a
Sure.
level of one-upmanship, that idea. But I could see people just wanting to chuck dice and have that energy be part of the experience. But I personally do prefer Unmatched the way that does it.
And I had mentioned what my favorite part of Funkoverse is. My favorite part of Unmatched is the fact that while all of those decks are unique, and like you said, they do play differently. Playing as Bruce Lee feels very different than playing as Bigfoot.
Right.
I did not feel overwhelmed by that deck when I first got them. I was able to flip through it and go, okay, I get you can pretty quickly get an idea of how that character should play. Now, are you going to be able to pull it off? Are you going to be able to take advantage of what they do better than the other characters? Maybe, maybe not. But in a lot of these card-based games, I feel this information overload at the beginning of a play session if I haven't played it before, and I didn't feel that with Unmatched. I felt like, oh, okay, I kind of see how this is supposed to work. And then the fun was, how well was I able to pull that off? Right. So that was nice.
I love the tactical aspect of Unmatched and the trying to math out to figure out okay, I need to make sure I don't run out of cards. Having a handful of cards to be able to defend and attack back is super important. But then trying to figure out how to combo those cards together. Okay, I'm going to play this one. It's not a good attack, but it's going to give me an extra action. Maybe they'll play a high defense. Now I'll play a higher attack. Those whole mind games are my hand's getting low.
Right.
I'm going to spend a couple turns running around and collecting extra cards so that way I can be ready for the next run back in and face your opponent. And there's a lot of strategic decisions there, which I find really crunchy and interesting in that set system, because I mean, like you said, there's no deck building or changing out any of these cards. I'm playing Robin Hood, you're playing Medusa, let's do this, that sort of
Now,
thing.
that hand management is definitely a part of the game.
Sure.
It's a very important one. And you have turns where you instead of playing a defense card, might not do so.
Right.
Because you're thinking, I think they're coming at me with a pretty strong attack. I don't think I need to defend it. I'm going to just save the card. It's clever. There is that aspect of trying to read your opponent's mind a little bit.
I do like that little boost element too, where you can kind of boost your movement, boost your attack, boost your defense. You have a pretty good idea, especially if you've played the game a couple of times, of what might be in your opponent's deck. But there's still enough there that with those boosts that you can't be exactly sure.
Right.
You know what I mean?
At the end of the day, the good news is both games, at least for 2020, have a full slate of releases coming.
Very true.
Both games, even if they stopped printing them at the end of 2020, you'll have a lot of stuff to play with them.
Yes.
And I think it's legit to own both. But we do get asked which one we like better, so we'll start with Roy and go by. Pick one, or forever be silent.
Yeah, for me, it's
know.
definitely
Forever be
straight up Unmatched. I really enjoy the tactical aspect and nature of it. Funkoverse was really interesting for me because you look at it and it looks like, oh, this is a kid's game. It's got the Funkos, it's got the silly chibi-headed guys, but the game is actually more complex than I thought it was. I was like, oh man, I'd love to play this with my kids. Wait a minute, there's a lot in this game with army building and all this different stuff. I have a huge history with HeroClix, and a lot of times I'd probably rather play the superheroes in that than I would in chibi big-headed form. But yeah, I definitely enjoy the strategy and the pitting these different mythical characters against each other in Unmatched.
I like them.
Thematically, it sounds like you're saying thematically, though, you kind of like Funkoverse.
I don't know. I feel like I've played that game for years because I have.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
I have
feel like you've done it.
I have a huge history with HeroClix, and I have a lot of it. So and it's basically I like the strategy and the randomness of that better than the randomness in Funkoverse. So when I want to play a game, like Unmatched has been the one where it's like I like the strategy in that.
Okay.
I like both games a lot, and I'll gladly play all the expansions for both, but I'm going to give the edge to Funkoverse because I like the mixing of stuff. I like that Batman can have a frying pan or whatever. I think that stuff is hilarious, and I've liked it ever since Duel of Ages first let me do that sort of thing. And then I also really like chucking the dice. I just do. Card combat's fine, and I enjoy it, and it works really well. And again, I think there's enough reason to own both games. But if I'm picking one, Funkoverse, and maybe then the third thing is I kind of like Funkoverse's IP slightly better.
Yeah. Right. And that's kind of what
Especially the Golden Girls!
That's kind of what I was getting to when I asked you, Roy, because I'm in the opposite camp. I like the places that Unmatched is going with their exploration of different concepts, intellectual properties, whatever it may be. Real life people, literary figures, what have you. While I enjoy, yes, the card combat more, I do find the board play aspect of it quite abstract. I'm not as fascinated by that part of it as you sound, Roy.
Yeah.
I do wish it was a little more flavorful, I'll say. But I'm loving the choices they're giving me in who I get to represent. Whereas in Funkoverse, I don't feel as fascinated by that. Rick and Morty, that's fine. Batman, I like that. Golden Girls, that's funny. It's a good gag. I like all those things just fine. But I would much rather be Robin Hood. I would much rather play as Medusa. And I love that they're coming out with, this is something we know, the announcements they've made. I'm much more excited about the announcements for Unmatched, where they're doing this sort of, late 1800s literary characters set. I want to be, what do they have? Jekyll and Hyde, Invisible Man, all that stuff is fascinating to me. So yeah, for me, it's a strong preference for Unmatched.
2-1, Mike.
All right, it's time for me to course correct a little bit. Because when we did our rankings of games of 2019, I ranked Unmatched higher. Since then, I've played more and wanted to play more Funkoverse. I'm also finding myself more interested in continuing to collect the Funko games than I am the Unmatched games. And it's not a clear thing for me, as much for me as it is for you, or for you, I think. I'm really on the fence on this one, but I'm tilting towards Funkoverse now, and I'm gonna definitively say that now that's the game I'd rather play. They're both good. I think with you, they both have a place in your collection. I don't play a lot of these types of games, but I'd be happy to continue to play both of these games. Just right now, I think I'm going to continue to collect Funkoverse, and for Unmatched, it's going to have to be something about the IP that grabs me.
Sure.
All righty, well, there you go. In the comments, you can tell us which one you like better, or if you've never played either one of them, go play them now.
Yes, they're good.
We'll see you next time for another Dice Tower reroll. Until then, I'm Tom Vassell.
I'm Z Garcia.
I'm Mike DeLisio.
And I'm Roy Candy.
Have fun gaming.